there, gang, welcome back to the channel. So I came up with another idea of something we could do here, and it's basically what everybody else is doing right now, and that is ranking all of the Superman movies. I know everyone's doing that right now because we just got a brand new iteration of the character less than a week ago, but you know what, I'm allowed to do it too. Right? That's fine. I'm a person with opinions. I might as well go ahead and do it just for fun. So yeah, here's a tier list of all the theatrically released Superman movies. This list was almost 100% complete, except it was missing Zack Snyder's Justice League, so I popped that back on. So this is the full list of every Superman movie. So this is excluding TV and serials. Worth mentioning that as well. And in preparation for doing this tier list, I brushed up on two Superman movies. One that I haven't seen in a very long time being Superman Returns, and also Superman and the Mole Men, which I've never seen before. I literally watched it less than an hour ago. So I want to just make as honest of a list as I possibly can. Though granted, there are like theatrical cuts, extended cuts, director's cuts, and there's one single movie here that I've never given the time of day. We'll get there when we do. Well, technically two, I suppose, but I guess I would feed more into like the director's cut sort of thing that I mentioned already. But I'll do my very, very best to explain these movies as I go. Spoilers ahead for all of them. And also, I'm just going to be solely going off personal preference, how much I enjoyed each of these movies. That's it. It has nothing necessarily to do with the actor who portrays Superman, the story being told. Just all this together as a package, how much do I like each of these movies? And then we'll rank them. So here's our tier list, pretty standard fare, but I gave it a few creative tweaks. Obviously, at the very best an S-tier Superman movie can be is Superman. Only makes sense, right? Then it's A, B, C, D, and for the crap de la crap, I have the Phantom Zone. So the worst of the worst will go down there. So, pardon me, I'm going to go ahead and cough to death. Now, all that being said, let's begin with the list. So this starts off with Superman and the Mole Men from the 1950s, which again, I just watched less than an hour ago. This stars George Reeves in his cinematic debut. This is the very first Superman movie, but not the very first time Superman was put to screen. Before this, you had the Max Fleischer animated Superman, and as for live action, he had Kirk Allen. That was the first one, but again, he was in serials. He never had his own movies. But George Reeves was the first Superman to really capture the imagination of the entire country, and perhaps the world in retrospect. But then again, seeing anything with George Reeves is a little sad, because you know that as great as he is in the role, and as fun as he is, this was something that he wound up dismaying in time, and it may or may not have culminated in his mysterious death. So it's an awkward experience whenever you're watching anything with him in it. You love seeing him do his thing, but at the same time, you feel kind of bad for the dude, too. So, but that being said, I do love him as Superman. I haven't seen much of him in the role. I never grew up with the show, and again, I just saw the movie today, but my dad always loved him. He grew up with him before Christopher Reeve came into the fold, of course. I don't know, I just always love that mystique of that, post-World War II, straight out of it, like gung-ho propaganda Superman. You know, talking to kids, teaching them right from wrong, just baseline raw Superman stuff. And for those of you who aren't familiar with this particular iteration of Superman, well, firstly, the movies where he debuted, and that rolled into his TV series, which ran for a very long time. And also, this is an older version of Superman. Not just that the actor is older, but also the lore is not built up to how we understand it today. The movie opens with saying that Superman came from a planet of superhuman beings, which we know is not true. He came from a planet of Kryptonians who were basically human beings, had no abilities at all, until they go to Earth and bathe in Earth's sun, and that's how Kryptonians get their powers. Not only that, but not once did he ever demonstrate laser vision or frost breath. He can fly, and he's really strong, but that's it. Those are his only abilities. So that's just how old this movie is. And now back to the movie itself, now that we've gotten the legacy of George Reeves and what this movie, indicated for the legacy of Superman out of the way. In my opinion, again, I just saw this, but honestly, this is the best Superman movie that time has forgotten. A lot of people write this off as kind of just a long TV episode. It's less than an hour long. It's very short, but it tells a really good, intricate, bittersweet story with what it has. Again, spoiler warning for everything on here, but I'll give you the long and short of it right here. So basically you have Superman, who's actually not very present in this movie at all. This is very much a detective movie, just trying to investigate this strange happening. It feels almost like Superman meets Universal Monsters in a strange way, where you have the titular Mole Men. It's this group of short little people, but they have enlarged heads, and they have furry hands, and they're very short. I'm not sure if they're played by kids or little people necessarily, but they're totally mute, they don't say a word. They crawl out of, like, these railways, like, from underground, and you don't know what they're doing. They're kind of just exploring, and whenever they touch something, there's this glow that emits from them. Like, there's one point where they interact with oranges, they interact with a ball, and it starts glowing, and people think it's radiation. So, like, Superman, we need you to investigate these mole people and figure out what's going on with them. So you think, oh, it's going to be a very simple, basic story of, oh, Superman defeats the Mole Men, sends it back from where they came from, and that's it. This movie is a lot more clever than it lets on, and perhaps more than it has any right to be. Instead, you realize in the movie, the Mole Men are not the villains at all. The villains are the very people that Superman has been brought to Earth to protect. What happens is an angry mob emerges to eliminate the Mole Men. So they're running around with guns and stuff like that, and they're trying to shoot him down. And in fact, they do shoot one, and Superman actually has to save him before he falls to his doom, and then he actually brings him to a hospital and all of that. And then what happens is the last Mole Man runs back to his people, and they crawl back out to save their buddy. And so you realize the people are the problem. And that's not really something we've seen explored that deeply in any of these other movies. Maybe touched on a little bit in the Snyder films, but here a lot more blatantly so. And again, going back to this movie's charm, its propaganda nature, if I'm to put it that way, there's a moment that I cap off as one of the craziest but most interesting lines Superman I've ever heard him said, where there's a whole bunch of guys with guns at the steps of the hospital where that wounded Mole Man is being held, and Superman's standing in between them, and he blatantly says, "I'm not going to let you storm in there like Nazi stormtroopers." Straight up. Keep in mind this movie came out in 1952, not even a decade after World War II ended. So that line hits extremely hard, and it reminds you of what Superman originally was. He's been interpreted in so many different ways since then, but like all superheroes from that time, he was a propaganda tool. He was meant to tell you that Nazis, KKK, these are bad people, and we got to do something about them. So we're seeing the actions of these terrible people within the very people that Superman has sworn himself to protect. So it changes the dialogue. Now he's protecting the Mole Men from his own people, which I think is actually really great. And the movie concludes with Superman getting the wounded Mole Man and bringing it back to his people. They bring him underground, and the movie ends with the Mole Men exploding the entrance to their underground lair, which we never see. And the whole thing ends with Lois, because she's also in this movie, which is really cool. She says, I guess that's their way of saying that you people live your lives and we'll live ours. And then you get the big old classic, the end, in big bold font, and that's the end of the film right there. And that's very bittersweet. It's not a hopeful ending by any stretch. Like, Superman did his job. He protected the Mole Men. He helped them to live and survive. And not a single human was killed in the skirmish at all. But ultimately, the humans and their Mole Men are left in the state of ambiguity. What really was the intentions of the other race? The reason why the Mole Men went up out of their hiding hole to begin with, as far as I can tell, is because humankind has industrialized the land that they knew. So they retreated underground, and then they sent 2 missionaries up just to see what was going on. And they were just exploring, having a little bit of fun, and again, causing that strange glow in anything they touched, or if they fell down, they'd leave a little patch of glowing grass or whatever. And immediately, humans were like writing that off as, they're radioactive, we need to get rid of them. But then Superman realizes, no, it's just a phosphorus glow. It's glowing, sure, but it's harmless. These people didn't mean any harm at all. And even when they go out to save their wounded friend, they have this crazy looking ray gun. It's like full car exhaust or something. It was massive. And they actually aim it and fire it at a guy who was running around who's the mob leader, and he's trying to kill them all. But they shoot the laser at him. It does nothing. It just pushes him back. The mole people are pacifists. They have no interest in hurting people at all. They just want to get their guy back. And Superman helps them. But at the end of the film, while no one dies, ultimately the trust of both groups is shaken. And I doubt the Mole Men would be revisited later on in the show that followed, because again, I've only seen a single episode of the show in full. It's the only free one that's on YouTube right now, and that was a pretty good one too. But the fact that we never see the Mole Men again, at least I suspect, that's just interesting to me. You know, and of course, this is a whole thing is a metaphor with a metaphor for colonization, international relations. It was done in a very clever way, and it didn't sugarcoat it. Again, he blatantly says the mob are acting with Nazi mentality. So yeah, it's kind of a somber ending, but it really speaks for the nebulation of the time. It did a really good job. I really like this movie. I wouldn't even say it's recency bias, being that, again, I just saw it within the last hour. This was a good movie. I thought this was really good. Obviously, it's Superman's not running around throwing punches, shooting lasers, destroying buildings, or anything like that. He does some cool stuff here and there that's not nearly on the same scale as the films that would come later. But for its time, Superman did exactly what he needed to do. And this movie is such a time capsule. So you know what? This movie, I wouldn't say it represents what Superman is and how we understand him now, but it pioneered the concept. So I'm actually going to give this an A. Again, we're just going off how much I enjoy these movies. Solid A. I wouldn't rewatch it all the time, but I think it's a really interesting movie. It's a really good one to study. It's very clever in ways that these ones are not. Obviously, well, some, not others, are clever, but this one has its very unique intelligence. It's a very unique message. I know I kind of just read out the whole story for you, but definitely check it out. It's pretty easy to find. But that being said, the show ran for as long as it did. I think it was renewed for a revival, but unfortunately, George Reeves took his own life, or he was killed, no one's sure. So Superman remained dormant for a long time, until 1978. This is where Superman, the movie, dawned on us. And basically, we all know the story by now, but to reiterate, Richard Donner, he wanted to take everything that we knew about Superman by that point and translate it to film in a way that it's being shown to us as a classic American myth. This isn't just a hero, he's a legend to us. And this whole movie is a perfect storm, in the best way possible. First, you have a nobody, Christopher Reeve. I don't think he had any major acting credits, or any at all before this. I think he was a thespian of sorts. But this is the movie that put him on the map for the first time, for obvious reason. And he was so impactful as Superman, I said this before, art imitated life. All interpretations, whether it be on the page or on the screen, going forward, were modeled and judged after Christopher Reeve. He became the template. So we had Christopher Reeve. Then you have Margot Kidder as well, and all the other actors in the film. But then you also have a John Williams score. You have Richard Donner's direction. This movie is basically perfect, at least it is for me. I think the only area where people do have a legitimate critique is where Superman is so powerful that he reverses time. That never bothered me too much because, again, it's one of the original raw comic book movies. It's okay for a superhero to just be super and do crazy impressive things, crazy impressive feats, even if it does break science a little bit, even if it does create a plot hole or two, which certainly it does. But just the fact that we're able to get a holistic Superman that's caught up on the lore that had been built up since Mole Men was great, and it made it a more accessible package to modern standards. And whereas people could call Mole Men dated, Superman 78 absolutely holds up today. Like, people say, the visuals are a little clunky, he's too cheesy, he's too gung-ho. No, I think this is perfect. This is a movie you could pick up any age, any gender, any level of experience, any education, and you get something from this movie. This movie is just hope incarnate. It's purely hope. Even if Superman himself doesn't experience, like, a great arc, since he can basically just save anyone by reversing time, this is the only superhero movie where it's just hopeful. And sometimes we need that. It's okay that there's not a crazy conflict. I mean, Lex Luthor is a totally batshit villain in this movie, sure. But anything he does can be corrected by Superman if he turns back time and drops him in prison or wherever. But that's okay. Just to see Superman doing Superman things in the most holistic way possible, it's pretty great. And last note I'll put here, because everyone's seen this movie, come on. I've said this before. One of the reasons why this movie is so important to me is because this wasn't the first time I saw this. I rewatched it with my dad, but my dad turned this on for me hours after I learned I was diagnosed on the autistic spectrum in 2014. And this little movie just gave me just a touch of hope in one of the craziest moments of my life. So this movie is seriously important to me, and again, we're ranking everything here based on how much I love them, total subjectivity, and even without that, it's objectively one of the greatest movies ever made. This movie, Superman, it's the embodiment of how we understand Superman. There have been critiques, there have been evolutions for this character since, but this is the template. You don't touch Superman 1978. It's basically exactly what it needs to be. You need very little more. So that being said, we move into another big fan favorite, Superman 2. It's not talked about often, but this movie is very beloved, but it does have a very trivial history. As I said before, we're going to be dipping into the territory of director's cuts and stuff like that. This is one of those cases. So the history with this movie is, while Superman 1 was being made, Donner was also working on Superman 2. I think he filmed 3/4 of Superman 2. Then I don't remember what happened. Either he got kicked off or he left. I don't remember what the circumstances were. But he got replaced by a different director whose name I don't remember. And they had to fill in the gaps with their own newly added footage to complete the film. And that's one that we got in theaters. That was a theatrical cut. But then I think either late 90s or 2000s, Donner came back and released the Donner cut. So he went back in the movie, kept all the footage that was his, and added test footage to complete his vision of Superman 2. But that being said, while I do prefer one over the other, I think that would be the Donner cut. Both of them are flawed. So the issue with the first one is, of course, you have two directors' visions kind of becoming a Frankenstein as one. And because of that, the tone can shift. There's pretty psycho-bonkers powers that are introduced to the fold. Like, I think it's kind of fun and silly and goofy in retrospect, but Superman grabs a logo on his chest and throws it, and it becomes a net that captures the Kryptonians, which is kind of wacky, but also it creates a plot hole like, why didn't you just do that before, whenever there was trouble on the horizon or anything? So it had some hokiness to it that just didn't really work. As for the Donner cut, I think tonally it was more consistent. It has one of my favorite moments in comic book movies, there we go, I nailed it, finally, where the moment where Lois figures out Superman and Clark Kent are one and the same. She's so confident, so naive, that they're the same person. She points a gun straight at Clark Kent, and I didn't even mention him, but Reeve does the best Clark Kent, easily. He's like, Lois, what are you doing? You can't do that to me. And she's like, if you're the Man of Steel, you're going to be fine. It's going to bounce right off you. She fires around at him. Suddenly the facade melts away, and then he goes, you realize if Clark Kent were standing right here, he'd be dead. He would have been killed. Then Lois goes, by a blank? And then Superman, not Clark Kent, but Superman's like taken off guard. And then Margot Kidder goes, gotcha. Oh, God, that was a great moment. But again, not in a perfect movie, which really sucks. So this movie's hard to place because, again, there's two versions of it. I'm not going to divvy them up into one Superman 2 and another Superman 2. Because, again, I think they're both of the same quality. And I'd watch them equally, right? A slight edge to Donner cut. But ultimately, if I'm gonna pick up any old Superman, it's gonna be 78 probably. So I would say I'd give it a B. Oh, and I also should mention Terrence Stamp as Zod. He's awesome. I love him a lot. And the other two Kryptonians are very cool too. But for me, I don't know. These two movies up here, they just feel like they're more memorable to me. Mole Man having a really interesting and underrated narrative, and 78 being Superman 78, for reasons I've explained already. And also the fact, a big difference between 78 and 2. In 78, Superman is Superman and never throws a single punch. That's really interesting to me. A superhero movie where he doesn't hurt a hair on anyone's head. I think it's really a testament to what this film can do. So now we move on to, unfortunately, a dark chapter in the Donnerverse. Well, I guess it's not even Donner anymore, right? But Reeve is still here. We have Superman 3. I've watched this a few times. I think I watched this last year or early this year at some point. It wasn't my first time. I was just revisiting it because I'm very impressionable. If there's an action figure coming out of a certain character, I gotta watch the movies that associate with them, if any. So Superman 3 was on my list, and yeah, I don't think this is anyone's favorite. There's literally only a single thing that I like about this movie, and that is the moment where Superman becomes corrupted by synthetic kryptonite, and his personality splits in two. So that brings us to the iconic battle between Clark Kent and a dark, brooding, drunk, angry Superman. And ultimately, Clark Kent manages to prevail. That is a really great scene, really good symbolism, and it reminds you that as powerful and as good and as dutiful as Superman is, he could claim the world for himself in a heartbeat. He could have whatever he wants. He could get as drunk as a skunk. He could have any woman. He could kill whoever he wanted. It would be so simple. And this is one of those few times in the saga where we actually see Superman's, I wouldn't say necessarily dark tendencies, although that is what this is, but almost just this pessimism, this anger, this fury, which is very human too. But he only wins the fight because he's able to accept that. That is part of him. He's Kryptonian by blood, but he's human by heart. And that's what allows him to win this internal conflict. But everything else outside of this single scene, I either don't remember or I really dislike. Worst part about this movie is Superman's not the main character. It's Richard Pryor. For some reason, I'm not too familiar with Richard Pryor. I know he's a well-revered comedian. But I didn't like his humor in this movie. I was like, where's Superman? I want to see Superman, and I want to see Lois Lane. And Lois Lane was barely in this movie. She was reduced to a cameo. She had to, she was like, no, I got to cover a story somewhere else, sorry. And then instead Superman is going after this woman who, I guess I'll give this movie props. This woman's brought back from the first movie, so there's a little bit of continuity in there. And then her son as well. But you're like, what? But he's loyal to Lois. We all know that. No matter which cut of Superman 2 you prefer, it's him and Lois. That's what these movies are supposed to be. So yeah, this movie is just bizarre, and there's these computer monsters or something. The rest is so unmemorable. Yeah, really all I have to say is I really loved the fight between Dark Superman and Clark Kent, and I had no interest in Richard Pryor, and Lois Lane not being part of the picture, big downgrade. So, yeah, should I judge this movie based on a single scene? Because it's not all bad. I do think that one scene is very good. It's one of the best things about the Superman movies. And that's the thing about all four, really. Christopher Reeve is always great. So it's nice that we get to see him be this alternate version of Superman, right? So at least this movie gives him that chance to change up the formula a little bit. So I'll give it a slight edge, but not by much. I won't cast it into the Phantom Zone, but I will give it a D. I definitely don't enjoy watching this movie. I would never turn this on for fun. I just go on YouTube and watch 7 minutes of the junkyard battle, and that's it. So, now we move on to Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. One of the only movies here that I have not seen and that I have not bothered seeing. Actually, part of me, before doing this video, I was thinking, like, should I watch Quest for Peace? And ultimately, I decided no. And, which is unusual for me, because, like, obviously this is one, like, while Superman 78 is one of the best movies ever made, this Superman 4 is considered one of the worst. Not just in comics, but just in cinema. So I was thinking, like, should I even give this movie the time of day? Like, I'd like to get my own opinion and all of that. But after I learned what I learned about this movie, and just recalling all of that, this isn't just a bad movie, it's a broken movie. The budget was so bad. There was so much recycled footage. And that's one thing about this movie that really sucks, that I think about it. Christopher Reeve, there is footage of him saying that he wanted this film to be very good. He wanted it to speak about nuclear weapons and international relations and stuff like that. He actually was very hopeful about this film, but because of the budget, because of the direction, it just was not in the cards. And like, here's the thing, like, I'm a Batman and Robin defender. I'm one of those, right? I'm one of like 7 people on the earth, but I will defend that movie until I'm dead in the ground. I love that movie a lot. What saves it? Good direction. Even if you hate the plot, even if you hate George Clooney, the story is very good when you really strip it down. But this movie, it's total. From what I've heard, there's very little to defend about it. Like, at least for movies like Batman and Robin, you have that little legion of defenders. Like, hey, there's a few good things in here. Why don't you check it out for that? I've never heard one person say, Quest for Peace, you can even watch it because it's so bad it's good. Everyone just looks at it and are totally reviled. I haven't heard a single good word about this movie. Honestly, I wish Christopher Reeve would have been just given a full budget for this, and he'd do the whole thing himself if he had that much confidence. Imagine, Superman himself creates a Superman movie, and it's all his vision, all his story, and that could have wrapped up this whole quadrilogy on a really good note. Bring it all back full circle. It could have been really interesting, but unfortunately it just wasn't in the cards. Like, yeah, Margot Kidder and Gene Hackman came back, sure, but I don't think there was much new happening with them either. So unfortunately, from what I know, this movie has so little to offer, and there hasn't really been anything that's drawn me to this movie to even give it a try. So for the time being, I will have to drop it into Phantom Zone, but I say that loosely because, again, I haven't seen it, right? So it would be more fair if I actually watched it, even though it is considered to be one of the worst movies ever made. So moving on, we hop ahead. This is the end of Christopher Reeve's tenure as Superman, unfortunately, and we all know why, sadly. But that takes us to Superman Returns. This is a movie I've seen several times throughout my life, and I actually had it on DVD in my apartment, so I'm like, okay, well, you know, it's the week of Superman, right? So I threw it in just to give it a rewatch and see what I thought about it. And going in, I already knew this was supposed to be a direct sequel to Superman 2, so 3 and 4, Quest for Peace, were no longer canon in light of this movie. Take it or leave it, really. But that being said, because this movie is trying to match the tone and the heart of those original 2 films, or technically 3 if you consider both cuts of 2, that's actually its greatest weakness. This movie has a very tough time at maintaining its own identity. It's trying so hard to be a copy. Like, here we have Brandon Routh, and he is a Superman actor who's no one would say is bad or terrible. I think there's a good amount of people who say he's a really good actor, but because of what he was asked to do in this movie, which was simply being Christopher Reeve 2.0, which, spoiler alert, you can't do, he was given the short end of the stick, and he didn't have a whole lot of creative license. He couldn't just give his own take. If he was able to do that, that alone could have made this movie a lot more outstanding. Yeah, but yeah, because this movie was trying so hard to be an echo, or not even, like, just a direct continuation of something we had before, there's very little for it to offer on its own merits. I watched this movie, and honestly, it just felt kind of hollow. I felt like it was simply a story, but I didn't feel like it was adding anything. I didn't feel like there was anything new. I didn't feel like we were learning more about Superman. I didn't feel like we were learning more about the mythos. There was nothing new to tell. we had like legacy characters returning in the form of different actors, of course, but they're just serving their roles as they normally do. But at the end of the movie, Superman's still here, Lois is still here, Lex is still here. It's just like, if there was a Superman TV show that continued right off of Superman's 1 and 2, this would be one of those episodes, just with those original actors, right? Like, it had some cool set pieces with the plane, and then when Luthor kind of terraforms a portion of land. But literally, going into this movie, those are the only two scenes I remembered. Leaving this movie just a few hours ago, those are the only two things I remembered. Like, this movie really just felt kind of soulless. And it was not Brandon Routh's fault. It was just because of the way that this movie was engineered, what it was trying to do. It was trying to do the impossible. It was recapture nostalgia, not as like a wink, in a winking sort of way, but trying to just be a carbon copy, and it did not work. It came out very crude. It didn't work. Like, that's the thing, it's not bad, but you just know there's a better version of this, right? So it like doesn't have much business existing, except for the fact that people saw something in Brandon Routh, and unfortunately can't really speak to it because I haven't seen any of the shows, but he came back in one of the shows, and that's where people say that he was finally able to come into his own and be his own version of Superman finally. So if I could track that down, I'll certainly watch it, and I'm sure he's great in it, so I'd love to see what's going on there. But as for this movie, I feel bad for the guy. He wasn't given a fair shake here. He was given an impossible task. No one could fill Reeves' shoes. We all know that. So, in terms of how much I enjoy it, actually, this is pretty evenly distributed. I didn't even plan on that. Yeah, I definitely prefer to watch Superman 2, either of the twos, more than Returns. But, yeah, give me Returns over Superman 3, for sure. Because it's kind of a blah movie, but it's not, like, bad. It doesn't totally turn me off. It's like, alright, I'll play it in the background, fine. That's what C is to me. Like, it's an okay movie, and there's nothing wrong with it. Just that it doesn't really add anything new, so why bother, right? But it's not really bad, and it's not super heavily flawed except for one scene, right? It's competent, but that's the best I could say about it. So now we move on to what a lot of people's favorite is, Man of Steel. Of course, this is where the DCEU kicked in. This is where it started. And this movie was very controversial, and it continues to be. We got a brand new Superman yet again. This is Henry Cavill. And I think this movie's tough. Again, I prefer the more chipper, gung-ho Boy Scout Superman, right? And this movie is definitely not that, but I've always appreciated what it's trying to do. Like I've said before, this movie is a counter-argument to how we've come to understand Superman. This Superman has much more blatant flaws. He doesn't come across as, like, a divine, powerful figure as Reeve did, necessarily. He feels more down-to-earth, I suppose, more bitter, more brooding, I guess. And the way the story plays out is, of course, he's got to protect the planet against General Zod from terraforming the Earth. It's basically a revamp of Superman 2. But the thing that throws people off is the fact that there's a really high body count in light of Superman doing his thing, trying to save the world. And trying to save Metropolis, he winds up leveling a good portion of it, and probably killing thousands of lives. And that goes unmentioned in the movie. And I think one of the most controversial moments in this film, which I actually think is really good, is where, of course, Zod is trying to laser down a little family. And he's like, if you love these humans so much, then you can die with them, or something like that. It's been a while, I haven't seen this in some time. But ultimately, Superman is forced to snap Zod's neck, and he just lets out this scream of anguish. That scene I do like. I think that's really interesting. Because as Superman, he does want to save lives. He does care about humanity. And even one of his own. I mean, you gotta imagine he is somewhat sympathetic towards Zod, just on the fact that they are the same species, right? So there must be something there. But ultimately, his morals are tested, and Zod proves to him that he can't always uphold his inherent goodness. which is unfortunate. And that's not something we always like to see with our heroes. We like to see them adopt morals and stick with them. But this movie shows us that sometimes even the greatest of the great, they can be tested, and they have to break one of their cardinal rules in order to save the day or save a few lives. It just needs to happen. So I wouldn't say I love this movie because of that, but I respect it. It tried something new, definitely different from all the movies you've seen before. But that being said, do I love this movie? I did see it in the theater when it released. What was it, 2011? I want to say 2012. Jeez, feels like a century ago now. But even then, I was like, hey, that was cool. I liked it. I didn't have any radical feelings up or down about it either way. I just said, it's cool. I like it. So, that being said, I really don't have a whole lot else to say about it. I don't prefer the darker atmosphere, but it works for the character, it works for the arc. It suits him well enough. So, and Henry Cavill's a good enough Superman. I don't think he's one of my favorites. I don't even think he's in my top three. Honestly, I think my top three are George Reeves, Cornsweet, who we'll talk about later, of course, and then Christopher Reeve. But he's solid. He fills his role just fine, and we get to see more of him in later films. So he does have a little bit of a benefit from other Supermen that we've seen. But that being said, where I put it on the list, you know what? I do think I prefer to watch it more than Superman Returns, so I will give it a B. But I would be more interested in seeing Christopher Reeve do his thing in either of the Superman 2s. So I think I would keep Superman 2 above Man of Steel. But Man of Steel is still a great movie. It's just not 100% my taste. But I totally respect it. I do think it is a smart movie. The issue is it nailed a tone that not everybody wanted. And that's why we just got a reboot only several days ago. Anyways, moving on to Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice, another very divisive and controversial one. Again, we have two cuts of this movie. There's a theatrical cut, which I have seen, and an extended cut. I never bothered with that because, as far as I've heard, it enhances the movie just a little bit, but it doesn't, radically change the plot like the two Superman 2s have done. So, I'm fine with just sticking with, theatrical cut. It does enough for me that I kind of get the point. That's the thing about the Snyder movies, all his DC movies. They're full of great moments. They really nail tone, and the action pieces are really good. But as far as character development goes, I don't really feel that as much as I do with other movies on this list. Granted, it's there, it's present, you do see arcs, but I feel like the pacing doesn't quite match with the rhythm of the action and the dialogue. I've just never connected with the characters as strongly as I wish I would have. I like Ben Affleck's Batman because he's really cool, but not necessarily because of his characterization. I love the warehouse scene like anyone else, but do I love Ben Affleck's character as Batman, as Bruce Wayne? Not particularly, and Superman just continues to be Superman here. So nothing goes up or down for him, for me, in this film, except for the Martha moment, and I feel as most other people do on that, but the story of this movie is Batman represents a lot of other people who are concerned that Superman's going to cause a lot of collateral damage, or if he takes a turn for the worse, and just chooses to level the place. And it's been proven. I mean, this movie is actually kind of clever in that it's a direct answer to Man of Steel. It directly addresses all the buildings that fell down, which Man of Steel did not. So in retrospect, this movie actually kind of saves Man of Steel and helps it a little bit. But as a movie, I like it more for the set pieces, for certain scenes, than the actual plot. I think the reason why Superman dislikes, why Batman dislikes Superman, I think that works very well. But I wish that was the movie, right? That feels like it's just the first half, or maybe the first 2/3. But then after that, you got, in my opinion, the worst Lex Luthor we've ever seen, Jesse Eisenberg. I did not like him at all. And then you get Chungus Doomsday, as I have called him and will continue to call him, because that is not Doomsday, my friends. It's not Doomsday. And then Wonder Woman suddenly shows up, Flash has a cameo, Superman dies, and then somehow, he's in the scene looked really cool when I saw it in theaters, but then when you realize how he comes back to life later on, it makes absolutely no sense. Where He's in the coffin after his quote-unquote death, and then for the last seconds of the movie, you see those little pebbles start to rise from the coffin. Film ends. Cool, he's still alive. How? How is he regenerating in there? Not only that, but we learn that later on in at least one of the Justice Leagues that the rest of the league has to make a concerted effort to bring him back. Not like open a coffin, hey Clark, what's up? Like he's just like they have to go through an ordeal to bring him back. But this movie implies like, oh, we'll just pop right back up, and it kind of undoes everything we just saw. The whole Death of Superman arc. It's like why did they bother? They might as well have just forgotten about Wonder Woman, Flash, Doomsday, Lex. Just focus on Batman and Superman. I think I'd like this movie a lot more. I know a lot of people do love this movie, but for me, if you just boil it down to set pieces and action scenes, it's not enough for me to call it a great movie. That being said, I think it's fun to watch. I think it's got interesting elements in it, like Man of Steel. But Man of Steel is definitely a stronger narrative, and that's just focusing on a single character, so it benefits from that. But this movie definitely gets a lot more convoluted. The CGI for Chungus Doomsday is absolutely awful, terrible. He's great action figures we reviewed on my Player Display channel, but as a character, don't like him at all. So yeah, this has more negatives than Man of Steel does. Man of Steel, I think it's fine, but I think BVS is too ambitious for its own good. But I like watching it enough. So, and as much as there are scenes I really like, there are scenes that really do drag and really bore the crap out of me, and there's just like no meaning or intrigue to them. So I'd say I drop this in a comfortable C tier. I'll play it in the background a little bit. And I would put it above Returns, though, I will say, because there's more to enjoy in it. I can name several scenes in BVS I really like. In Superman Returns, I can name one scene, and that's about it, being the plane, but that's all. So now we move on to the Joss Whedon Justice League, or the Justice League, as it's infamously called. This is the second movie on this list I've never watched. Don't worry, I've watched the other two, so we'll have more to say on those. But the reason why I watched this movie, if you know anything about it, you probably know why too. This movie does not exist to me for several reasons. Firstly, we got the Zack Snyder Justice League after this, so this movie is basically not canon. And second, the way this movie was produced is kind of horrible. I got a lot of my new movie know-how, I will admit, from Sean Chandler. He's a really good reviewer. I love a lot of his ranking lists. I disagree with some of his stuff, especially when it comes to Planet of the Apes, but overall, I really do agree with his opinions and the trivia that he brings into the fold. But I learned about the production of this movie from him, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. Where this movie, Justice League, was being produced by Zack Snyder initially, but then unfortunately his daughter passed away, so he had to hop off of the project. So, Warner Brothers rushed in Joss Whedon to finish the film, but because of that, this movie's half Snyder, half Whedon, and then he got a tonal clash. I think Whedon worked on a lot of the Marvel films, which would probably explain why I'd hate this movie, because I do not like the tone of the MCU movies much at all. I hate the quippiness and stuff like that. And from what I've seen of this particular version of Justice League, it definitely trickles into this film as well. So that's a really big issue. And again, it's not a singular vision, so the story's incoherent from what I've heard. It's cut down. So this movie is a whole mess. And just simply on the metric of how it came to be, and the fact that we have a superior counterpart to it, it doesn't need to exist at all. I'd go ahead and say it's worse than Superman 4. Like, at least for Superman 4, I'm willing to give it the time of day, just because at least Christopher Reeve, like, had a mission going in. It didn't come to full fruition, but he was very passionate, but he was held back by budgetary constraints and directing jargon and stuff like that. So at least this movie wanted to be something. Justice League is a product and nothing more. There is no heart to it. You've got two people clashing their own tones, degrees of humor into it. And they did some stuff with Wonder Woman I heard about that was a little bit distasteful and weird and odd and out of character for everyone else. So I didn't like that either. And again, that kind of speaks to the humor of this movie, right? Then you got the infamously CGI'd away Henry Cavill mustache. So yeah, I don't even think about this movie. It does not exist to me. So that takes us to Zack Snyder's Justice League. I know for a lot of people, this is their magnum opus. They love this movie. But this bitch is 4 hours long. So what happened is, after the failure of Justice League, Zack Snyder, I think he was crowdfunded to release the Snyder Cut. That's the big hashtag that was around at the time. And you know what? He got to do it. And that's enough for me. The fact that he was able to come back around after a horrible family tragedy and complete his masterpiece. That alone makes me very happy that this movie simply exists. I'm happy it's here for him, and I'm happy it's here for the people who loved the DCEU, or for me it was kind of a mixed bag. And I can say the same about this movie. I did watch it, I think, twice, but I have no desire to revisit it. It was fine. Obviously competently directed. Because it's 4 hours long, you have a lot more time with all these different heroes. You get to know them better. They have much better chemistry. You know their motives. You know their loss. You know their weaknesses and their strengths. So you get to sit with these characters for a lot longer than in this cobbled together initial 2-hour Justice League movie. So that's another, just by proxy, this movie's better than the original one, right? But that being said, as I've said before on this channel, I'm not a huge fan of team-up movies. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Never loved Avengers. Never cared much about Justice League. Avengers was hampered by the MCU humor more than anything for me. It just murders the tone or whatever story those movies are trying to tell. That's why I dropped off such a long time ago. As for Justice League, the movie's fine. I don't think there was anything particularly wrong with it. Obviously, the best part is how they reworked Superman. They gave him the frickin' black suit, which was awesome. Gave him new lines that weren't totally cringe. He actually looked cool. He moved cool and everything. So he got literally a new lease on life. He's freaking brought back from the dead. So that helps. They have the iconic shot of him soaring up into the sky and bathing in the sun. I love that. It's one of the best shots of Superman in movie history. I love that image. Again, imagery is one of Snyder's strengths when making any film, no matter what you think about the quality. But all that being said, there's so little I can recall about this movie because it's so dense. It's really heavy. And also there's a lot of CGI, and I don't think it's the cleanest ever. So there's a lot of working parts in this thing, and granted, it's long enough to explore it all for the most part, but for my little brain, it's just too much. But I'm very happy that this movie exists, because Zack Snyder got to make his vision, and his fans finally got their movie that they deserved. So, that's the thing. So now, how much do I enjoy watching it? I'd say it's a competent C tier, but because it's so long, it's not just a movie, it's a commitment, right? You're going to be sitting on the couch for a long time. So I'd rather pop in any movie from Superman down to B into my TV, as opposed to even grazing Justice League, because it's just freaking massive. It's kind of a chore. Not to say it's bad, because it's not, but just 2 hours, 3 hours even is fine. 4 hours, that's really killer. I can't do it. But again, it's a fine movie. So I'll shut up. Where am I going to put this? Again, just based on how much I'd like to watch it. Again, I'd prefer any of the two Bs more than Zack Snyder Justice League. So that puts, I'd say, in the C tier, because it's not D tier where I dislike watching it. I don't dislike watching Justice League. It's just such a long one. Yeah, I think I'd rather watch Superman Returns and reevaluate it. Same goes for BVS, but Snyder's Justice League, it's just not my taste, and it's huge, so I really can't do it. But C is nothing to cry about. That's a good placement for a movie, in my opinion. So now, the moment we've all been waiting for. Superman 2025, formerly titled Superman Legacy. I partly would have wished that they would have kept it, because they were drawing from so many different influences to make this movie. I've talked about this movie in depth already. I actually wish I went into it a little bit deeper. I did a review where I read out my thoughts before watching the movie, and then pretty much immediately after I watched it. So I do have that video if you want to check that out later if you haven't already. But since I posted that several days ago, I've watched other reviews, I've heard other people's takes, and now that I understand certain elements of this movie more, I love it a lot more. So, I mean, granted, This movie has only existed to me for a few days, right? It hasn't even been a week since I've seen it, so I'm still gonna give it some time. But as of right now, I really, really appreciate this movie. It had a lot to do. It probably bit off more than it can chew. But again, as I said in that review, and I stick to that, is the greatest thing this movie does is bring back that spirit that most people expect from Superman. The issue with Snyder's movies, it's not really an issue per se, it's just simply just a part of their nature, is that Snyder had a very specific tone, a very specific darkness, that people don't really commonly associate with Superman. So people like me, my folks, my friends, we'd fall back to Superman 78, because that's Superman we remember, that we align with more. Like, Man of Steel is cool and all, but it's such a unique pocket take on the character that we're not very familiar with, so it's a little alienating. I mean that literally and figuratively, because he's a freaking alien, right? So, they're very good for what they're trying to do, but it doesn't quite continue the holistic sense of what Superman's supposed to be. It diverts on its own path, which I respect them for, and they should do that. But this movie does a really good job at taking everything we know about not just Superman, but just comic book movies as we understand them now, and putting it into a nice little package that everyone can enjoy just a little bit in morsels. As I describe this movie, and I still subscribe to this statement, it's jack of all trades but master of none. I don't think it nails anything quite perfectly on the head, any of its arcs. But one thing it does nail just right is the message behind this particular version of Superman. One thing I realized in that review I didn't do a whole lot of talking about Superman himself, David Cornsweet. The more I thought about him, and the more I thought about the themes that were woven into this film, the more I love this Superman. And it boils down to being nice as punk rock, being hopeful as punk rock. It sounds really cheesy and gooey when you think about that, and that's kind of how I felt in the movie. I'm like, I don't really get that. So I needed some other people's thoughts to help brush me up on that, and I really understood it. It's so clever. Being a decent person in it of itself is a cool form of rebellion. That's what that means. We live in a world which is very dark, full of horrors, full of trouble, corruption, death, you name it. So what can we do just as normal, average Joe people? Be nice, be good, do good things, help others. You don't need to be a Kryptonian. You don't need to be Superman, Kal-El, whoever. You don't need to be any of those things. You could be ground level. You could be Clark Kent and make a huge difference. You don't have to do that much. It's so simple. And then after this movie, as cheesy as it sounds, you hear all these people going out and just doing these small little good deeds in the name of Superman. And that's a crazy thing. You'd think that, a movie as cheddar cheesy as George Reeves or Christopher Reeve, that would be like, oh, they're too nice. I can never match that. Come on, it's silly and all that. But then you get this movie. It takes the same message, contextualizes it with modern standards, and it makes being just the totally good person seem cool. It's not just the right thing to do, but it makes you feel good too. So everyone wins. And that's just a really cool message to bring forward. So I respect this movie a lot more because of that, of what it's trying to bring to the audience. I think that's really clever. And that being said, again, it goes back to that tone that we understand more about Superman, but again, evolves it a little bit more, progresses it a tad more, which is really great. And again, this movie does have weaknesses. I can't say it's a perfect movie, because again, there are a lot of story arcs which aren't explained as much as we'd like. We'll probably see them again in TV shows and other movies. You could also say this movie is something of a demo reel, right? Where it's giving you samplings of other stories we could see in the future. And then if there's enough interest towards any of them, whether it be Metamorpho, Mr. Terrific, for sure, the latter, Hawk Girl, Guy Gardner, whoever, then we'll see other material of them later on. But this movie has also been described as being very comic booky. Not in that this is the start of a comic series, but rather you just pick up a comic off the couch. It's not issue 1, it's like issue 27. And you're just dropped in the middle of this world where heroes are already flying all over the place. So you don't have to know everything, right? So that's kind of ingenious, whether intentional or not. That being said, again, it's not recency bias. I've had days to think about this movie, and I've only watched it once, right? And you can't rewatch scenes and rethink them out. Like, you only have what you've just watched. There's not, like, really a lot of stuff on YouTube yet you can rewatch or anything right now. It's just what you've taken from the theater. Seriously, no recency bias. I thoroughly enjoy this movie. I like it more than any of the Snyder movies. Again, I really respect what they're doing, but this new Superman movie helped me realize what was missing, you know? Like, DC had such a bad rep for such a long time because all the movies that came after Snyder were trying to follow in the footsteps of having a darker, more glum tone, shifting from director to director, which is usually never good, and because of that, we just got more sour products, and they had no meaning. People dropped off. So DC just became hollow, soulless, as a result of that. Not Zack Snyder's fault at all. He did what he had to do, but the way that Warner Brothers handled it afterwards, just misstep after misstep. But then they bring in James Gunn, who, again, I've said, he's proven himself good, because he made 3 Guardians movies. He did the sorely underrated Suicide Squad movie. He's proven his chops. He's done other niche projects, like he did Brightburn. He did frickin' Scooby-Doo 2, Monsters Unleashed. I didn't even realize that. This guy's good at making movies. And then you give him Superman, he already has comic book experience. And you know what? He did a pretty damn good job. Not perfect, but this movie gave you hope. It's not perfect, but this movie makes me hopeful for the future. And it takes a lot for a movie to do that for me. I usually go into the theater very cynical. I'm like, alright, I'll get a few yucks in there, I'll be some cool action, and I'm done. No, I walk out of the theater feeling like the future's looking kind of bright. Not just for movies, but just for people. And we're seeing it. Like, literally, this is a real statistic I've seen everywhere. Because of Crypto the Superdog, Google searches for adopting a dog in my area went up by 500%. That is wild. This movie made an impact. It's fascinating. It's changed people for the better. It's wild. And it's also hilarious. Again, I'm like watching like YouTube videos to see other people's thoughts and stuff like that. And you still see the occasional Snyder drone. Again, not to say if you like Snyder movies you're bad or you're wrong or anything, but people who just keep mashing anyone who likes the Gunn movies or are devoted fans of the Snyder movies. They're saying, like, save your wallet, don't watch the movie, don't buy tickets, don't watch the movie. The movie already broke even in opening weekend. They've already lost, right? Like, tell those losers to go home and just be with their families again and rejoin reality like the rest of us. This movie is a statement. It's very powerful. Not a perfect movie necessarily, but the message is so strong, it almost overpowers all of its weak points. It's so nice to see a movie that almost everyone can unanimously get behind and cheer for. I never felt that way with any of the Avengers movies, with any of the DCEU movies, any MCU, anything. It's been such a long time since a movie's made me feel hopeful, fresh out of the theater. I think the last time was maybe Rogue One, like, literally. And that ends with everyone dying, but I don't know where I'm going. But yeah, this movie, I love it a lot. I really, really do. I'm going to give it a firm A. Not Superman, because it's still flawed, but wait, we're talking about how much I enjoy these movies, not objective-wise, right? Not how well they're done. This is my second favorite Superman movie. Of all the movies here, this is the movie that the movie that I second most want to rewatch, right behind Superman 78, which I could plug in at any old day, any minute, no matter what mood I'm in. I'm throwing it in Superman 78. But right on its heels, I say Superman 2025. I seriously mean that. This movie brought something back, not just for me, but for everybody. It changed people's psychologies. This is a powerful movie, just because of that hope is punk rock message, or whatever it was. Cheesy, sure, but it packaged it in a way that it seems so easy, so digestible. It's so easy to be an asshole. It's so easy to be a jerk. It's so easy to be a Snyder bot, a gun bot, whatever. But it's also easy to just be nice, be chill, Hey, how's it going? Hey, need help carrying that? How's your day been? Simple little things. Like, how's the job? How's your family doing? Just simple little acts of gratitude. Just being chill. It's really that easy. And people are finally learning that. Instead of being so cynical, having their thumbs up their butts, this movie could change pop culture as we know it, I think. I have such a big amount of faith invested in Superman 2025. I can't wait to see. I guess that's why it was called Superman Legacy, but I can't wait to see what the legacy of this movie will be in 5 years, 10 years. I mean, there's a chance it's going to jettison a cinematic universe where we're, in retrospect, like, hey, Superman was cool. All the stuff that came after it, though, not very good. The universe burned out pretty quickly. Even then, this movie on its own had an impact. Objectively, it did something, and it's continuing to do things. I'm thrilled. I love this movie. Again, not because it's perfect, it certainly isn't, but the spirit is so strong. Superman 78's not perfect either, but again, the spirit. That's what Superman's all about. So I love 2025 for that. And yeah, I could keep prattling on, but again, this is a subjective ranking of all the movies, so I gotta bring it back to that, right? But yeah, this is my ranking. Here's everything we got from Phantom Zone all the way up to Superman. I'm not gonna like review it or anything. I think it was pretty thorough on all of them, but yeah, that's it. That's all I got. So let me know in the comments what your ranking would be, or at the very least, what was your favorite Superman movies, what are your least favorite, and why. Because everyone's got a different list. Some people put Man of Steel at the top. Some people put Snyder's Justice League at the top. I could see people putting 78 considerably low. I could never do that myself, obviously. But just because it doesn't align with their psychology or how they understand Superman, yeah, that's fair enough. But for me, that's just like the ultimate package. But Superman 2025 was a nice continuation and evolution of that. So these two movies are excellent. And Superman and the Mole Man caught me by surprise, and it's actually really underrated. So I actually really do enjoy this one more than either Superman 2 or Man of Steel. And then the rest of them, my thoughts are pretty clear. So yeah, that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned a few things. Hope you can teach me a few things too. So thank you very much. Punk rock on, I guess, right? So yeah, keep loving movies. Keep looking forward to the future like I am right now. And yeah, just have fun. And I'll see you next time.